more to marketing. Welcome to More to Marketing, a podcast on marketing, product, and everything in between. I'm your host, Susan, and today I've got a special guest. Jodie has come to join us to talk all about MarTech. She is an expert in this field and has been doing it for over 20 years. I've actually had the privilege of working with her in the past, so I firsthand have knowledge of how amazing she is. And I'd like to welcome Jodie. Hi, Jodie.
Hi, how are you?
Going well, and I'm so happy to have you here. A lot of people out there probably don't even understand what it is you do. So maybe could you just give us a bit of a background about your recent career, and then we'll start talking about MarTech itself.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to. I mean, obviously, when we worked together, that was like right in the middle of my career when I was coming out of kind of what I call career 1.0, and that was my e-commerce work that I was doing. But I actually started just as a marketing graduate. So I did marketing honours at university, and then I wanted to get into digital marketing. And it turns out that the companies that were doing digital marketing at that time didn't have really great budgets. So you had to learn how to do it yourself. And then suddenly you were doing tech. And then this kind of new role emerged that was in between the marketing team and the technology team. And you became kind of like a translator and helping both teams work together to get the customer experience up and running. So most recently, I've been working in consulting, so for some of the big consulting companies, but then also in-house at one of the major banks, and really looking at how you assemble your MarTech technology to deliver the customer experience. So never really losing sight of the whole fact that it's about the customer and what the customer is experiencing, not just about the tech.
Yep. And for those that don't know what MarTech is, it's actually marketing technology. And I did a little bit of research myself just to find out what it was. For me, when I did my Google, it said that the four pillars was CMS, marketing automation, CRM, and reporting. So all those important keys that come together for your analytics as well, so you can get the best decisions to make for customer interactions and make it the best experience. But for you, Jodie, what is MarTech for you?
I think those four pillars are really important, and I think they've probably extended a little bit too now. They include things like decisioning under that analytics and reporting heading. CMS is, of course, really important because that's what drives your website, your content management system. But then also we've got all these new tools around managing content velocity, so producing lots of content for the website and all of the other marketing channels. It's all in sync. And then we've got the workflow tools on top of that, which then take that same bit of content and you can use it in your CMS, or you can use it in your email automation platforms, and you're really getting that whole single story out to the customer. But I would just say that MarTech or marketing technology is any technology that a marketer has to use to get their job done. And to do that, I guess you have to define what the marketer's job is. And in that way, I would say it's really about delivering that customer experience end to end. And I think now more than ever, it includes things like service communications and every touch point that a customer might have, even how you handle complaints and how that translates into your NPS score and things like that. So it's not simply just about sending out an email and asking people to click on the button to get 20% off or something like that as it used to be. It's really evolved to be that whole end to end.
Yeah, it's just the whole story itself from beginning to end, how any customer interact with you has now got that digital marketing focus that you can add to it and make it better.
So an example in that, in the reverse, is where you're putting an iPad into the hands of someone in the store. So you could be going to Mecca and the sales assistant that has that iPad has that understanding of what your likes and dislikes are as well.
I think that's one of the most powerful tools now, is that personalization that you can really get in this technology space now that we never really could in the past. Even just like for me, I know it's a bit creepy, but the ability for cookies to then find more information and bring it back into your system so you get even a bigger array of what people are interested in can really cater it down to what a customer might actually want and not realize they want.
Yeah, I mean, personalization is really interesting because we started doing that a long time ago and then we couldn't get it to make money because by itself, being able to pinpoint a piece of data and turn a communication around doesn't really do it by itself. It has to be part of that greater experience, and it has to be something that you build your brand on. And so then it increases loyalty, and that's how you make the money. You don't make the money by sending out an email that has dear first name. It's like much more than that.
Exactly. And what's one of your favorite examples that you've ever done in the MarTech space? Can you think of one big one that really stood out, either from results or customer interaction point, or even just from a satisfied client that you can talk about?
Look, the most exciting piece that I ever did from a technology piece of point of view was working with Accenture Digital Studios, and they programmed a robot, actually a canning robot. So imagine like a low-tech robot that used to put lids on cans. They programmed him to be able to, he was
given a male name. So
yeah. He was, through machine learning, he was taught how to play a musical instrument. It was a custom-built musical instrument for him, and he played on stage at the Sydney Opera House with the Sydney Symphony Orchestra as part of an Adobe event. And so while my role in that was quite small, my role was to work out how the audience could interact with the robot. So inside your mobile phone, there is a piece of technology that can track whether you're waving your phone. So we had everybody in the audience turn their lights on, wave their phones to the music. The robot would pick up on the frequency that people were waving and then adjust the music.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Not just the orchestra he was playing with, but also the audience reaction as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a really, like, getting that technology to work, getting an analytics in the phone, to get that information, send it back to the robot. That was probably a career highlight. That
sounds pretty cool as well, to do that, not just with a robot, but also in such an iconic location as well, the Sydney Opera House. I understand why that one is a big one on your list.
Yeah, and it's funny because that was almost 10 years ago now, and it probably didn't make sense to people then. But now that we've got the language to talk about this kind of stuff, and I can say he was machine taught, and people understand what that means now.
Yep. I know what you mean. It's amazing how technology has just come about in leaps and bounds. In such a short period of time of 10 years, that is significant as well for the general public to be able to understand that terminology. But I suppose let's talk the reverse. What one is one that you would have loved to have seen succeed, but unfortunately the technology wasn't there yet, or it just wasn't the right mix to make it happen?
Oh, that's a really hard one. Because I think
you've been able to adapt. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I think that's the thing about digital marketing, because if you set up the measurement and you're able to, for want of a better expression, fail quickly, then you can always optimize it, and you've got that information. Like when you're dealing with customers, on a face-to-face basis, you don't have that feedback all the time. But in digital space, you should be able to react on it quickly and turn things around. I know lots of mistakes I've made, like accidentally pressing wrong buttons and sending out, vouchers to hundreds of people that weren't eligible and things like that.
I think that's a common occurrence.
I think all email marketers have done that once or twice. And that kind of thing. But in terms of actually having an experience flop, I can't think of anything off the top of my head. There's been some that haven't had the results we wanted, but then just going in and changing the audience, changing the copy or whatever, just to refine it and then improve it.
So probably one of the key outtakes there is with MarTech, you can actually do lots of pivots to be able to adjust where required. If you can't do exactly what you wanted to originally, you've got other options. And then two, also going back in and saying, okay, what is the new target, either the customers or our number target that we should be looking at because of X, Y, Z, and being open and honest about it throughout the whole process. I like that.
Yeah. I think one of the things too, like working in banking, which is where I've spent a lot of my time recently, and maybe and probably in other industries too, you don't want to give money away for the sake of it when you're running offers. And I think that's probably, where you start giving away money to people who might have already bought. And being able to understand where you're doing that so you can refine your programs is really important, because that's ultimately creating the ROI on the technology that you've bought as well.
Exactly. It needs to be able to have that ROI to benefit not just the customer, but also the organization that it's within, or else why do it? And that comes back down to that why piece.
Yeah, and MarTech, I've been lucky enough to work across the spectrum. So I've worked with, solo entrepreneurs who are using the MailChimps of the world, and then other organizations that have the full Adobe or Salesforce suite. But it's always the same. Like, it depends what you're doing with it, how you get the most out of it. Like you could throw so much money down that hole and not use the products properly and get the benefit that they're designed for.
Yep. No, completely understand. That's a really great point. So one of the trends coming out right now is the use of conversational AI, like chatbots and virtual assistants. What are your thoughts of this, of the now, and where they're going to lead to in the potential future when it comes to MarTech?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So Adobe launched a product directly in this space last week called Firefly, which is that's an imagery product that sits in that space. And they had a really cool demo where they had a stock image of a tent. And then suddenly the tent suddenly behind the tent, they generated multiple different backgrounds. So we had, and they were not real backgrounds. So we had a desert in quotation marks, because it's not a real picture. It's not a photograph. It's an AI generated background and a garden, etc. And like, from that point of view, that will make marketing teams' jobs so much easier, because it then decreases the amount of photography you have to do. It increases, the relationship you have between your imagery and your brand, because you can put controls in there to make sure that it suits the brand and you're not veering off the path. And so I think the imagery space is really exciting for marketers. I think in the content and the generating of text, it depends what the application is. You're still going to have to run, in most cases, your marketing copy through legal.
Yes.
And, those requirements about understanding what you can and can't say to customers, even just how you use the information, all of those kind of constraints. I don't think the chatbots at the moment, have that programmed in by default.
It's like that language and tone. Yeah. It's the language and tone that's missing.
So there are products that do that though. So, as IBM have a product that will take, I think originally it was designed to translate by language, but then they also translate by tone as well. So you could have, I think I remember them saying that you could kind of base the tone. So you could have like a Donald Trump tone.
Oh, okay.
So imagine getting an email saying your account is overdrawn in a Donald Trump tone versus your account is overdrawn in, I don't know, like a Mother Teresa tone or something like that, which is more careful nurturing. So those products exist, but again, they're taking that base text to be able to do that. So I think it'll be interesting. There's a lot of, in terms of just improving your punctuation and the way that we write and things like that, there's a lot of advantage there. It's going to save people time. It should save people time proofreading, even if the machines are the ones doing the proofreading and, like a autocorrect on steroids. But we also all know how annoying autocorrect can be when it gets it wrong, right? So
I'm even thinking there about the translation. If we then use these tools for translation and don't go to a translation service to check it, the errors that could potentially happen there could be quite devastating as well.
Yeah, so I think there's always, well, not at the moment, maybe at some point there's not always going to need to be human intervention, but at the moment I can't see a way that we can get around it.
One of the points I wanted to get your view on, I've read an article not too long ago in regards to imagery and AI and being created out of thin air. Copyright, who owns it? I find that one a really fascinating one, because we know right now today, if a photo is done, it's usually owned by the photographer or whoever company they sold it to. But what about the future when it comes to the AI imagery and who owns the rights to that? I think that's going to be a fascinating thing to watch over the next wee while too. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it is too. And there's a lot of talk about these new roles that are going to exist. So you could have a role as an AI prompter. So I bet that never came up, when I was at school thinking about careers. And like, that person's job is to feed the right information into the AI tool to get the results. And I've been like just playing around with chat GPT, and it's like, if you ask the wrong question, you get the wrong answer. And so those people are going to become really sought after.
Definitely. And they're almost like little visionaries and brand spokespeople all in one, with all these other skills as well. So it's going to be a real mixed type of individual that goes to those roles. So they'll be able to do something a bit more exciting than your standard behind the desk role, which is quite exciting too, to see the future.
Yes, move on from cut and paste.
Very true. So is there any other type of trends that you think are worth talking about right now for MarTech that people should just be watching, or at least checking out every so often?
Well, I think the big thing in MarTech is the CDP at the moment, so customer data platform. And like, different organisations have different motivations for getting a CDP. And some people I've observed are probably using it as a silver bullet where it's not. So they might be using a CDP to plug gaps in their data infrastructure. So their core data infrastructure isn't set up so they can put all the data in the one place, so they're using the CDP as a stopgap. And that's okay, because it works and it will do that. But you really should be fixing those core platforms and using a CDP for what it's made for. And in terms of what it's made for, it's all about creating those real-time customer profiles. So you don't necessarily need the history. You need this. At this point in time, this is what Susan looks like. Like, in the last 10 minutes, these are the events that she's done. And therefore, we've been able to trigger off communications through other channels. And then obviously, I think CDP, again, is like a little bit of a stopgap in this demise of cookies and first-party data. So at the moment, we need the CDP to route the data into those platforms, so into our data cleaning rooms, into the walled gardens, into Facebook, etc. We need some kind of mechanism to do this on scale, and the CDP is it today, but will it be in the future? I don't think anybody kind of has the answer to that, because there's a few options. But then the other reason that it's good to have a CDP, of course, is about that privacy and data protection, and having that built in and being a little bit idiot-proof compared to some of the other methods, like uploading Excel spreadsheets and things like that.
And forgetting to put passwords on things. Come on, people.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting things there that you were talking about was about interactions. And I personally feel that there's still nothing out there that is huge in the space of connecting, say, Susan, with every type of digital interaction she does in a way that makes it so meaningful, so personalized, so for Susan to be able to predict my next move. So that's something that I think is a bit lacking. But is there something that's similar to that right now that you're aware of? Because this is all new to me. I'm loving this.
Yeah, so prediction's really interesting. And I think, like, I was listening to Guy Kawasaki talk, and like, the closest we can ever get is prediction. We can never actually understand a customer's intent. As much as we can try and presume what the customer's intent is, not understand it, we can't even know it. we can surmise it and we can guess it, but we can't ever know it because we can never literally be in the customer's head. Mm-hmm. And so that's why we're left with this prediction and the obsession with prediction. Mm-hmm. And there are, like in the data world, there are some amazing tools and methods that you can use to get prediction really quite to the point. And one of the things that has kind of stopped that in the past has been rules like GDPR. So you can opt out and then your data isn't included in the model. And then the model's basically biased towards people who have opted out. Mm-hmm. And if that opted out group becomes like a large enough percentage, for example, they share another characteristics, then your whole model is really biased and not worth using. But now we have these synthetic data sets. So instead of using the customer's real data, we use AI to generate similar data across the entire data set that we're allowed to use. And so then you can feed that synthetic data in, you can do digital twins and things like this, which allow you to get better at that prediction. Mm. So it's almost like a double prediction, right? Because you're predicting the data set, and then you're predicting the customer actions on top of the data set.
Oh, I'm definitely glad I'm not in MarTech side. that would just confuse me a bit too much going down that path. I'll leave it to you. This is a bit where the data scientists do their really clever work. And if you think about where data scientists come from, they didn't start in marketing. They've been doing work in, one of my friends, she used to work for the UN, and she was doing data science on global resources in terms of, how much oil does the planet have left and stuff like that. And so we're taking these disciplines and then turning them into use for marketing. So they already have all of this capability, and one of the hardest things is just, sitting in a room with a data scientist and explaining to them. But you can't do that purist stuff because we've got all these rules around how and when we can contact customers and what we can talk to them about, and we can't just slam them with communications. They may never respond to us and go away. We don't want that. Yeah, we don't want to create fatigue and unsubscribe and all of that kind of thing. So I think those conversations that are happening with the data scientists and mixing data science and customer experience is really exciting at the moment. Yeah, and things like AI just generate those conversations even further. Yeah, I think for me, one of the things I interact with quite a lot is the Woolworths program. So for me, I don't know a lot about, but I know there's a lot of technology behind the scenes on that one. But for me, I think some of what it's doing at the moment when it comes to me personally is failing. So I'll give you an example, and then you can talk about it. I make purchases. I have children. I go from baby formula 1, they grow up, baby formula 2, I stop buying 1. I keep getting served, buy number 1 formula, buy number 1 formula. Then I move on, but my purchase behavior has changed. I'm buying 2. I then move to baby formula 3. I'm still getting served baby formula 1. And I think that's something that, like for Woolworths as this example, that they need to become, like get their MarTech to start focusing on changes in behavior or life cycle changes dependent on certain purchases. Because that one there, you could easily predict I'm going to start buying baby formula 4 because I've gone through the brand 1, 2, 3. But they're still trying to sell me number 1. I find that really interesting to see when that's going to change, particularly for me having that every day, or not every day, but every 2-week interaction with Woolworths. What are your views and thoughts on that one? Yeah, like I think there's heaps of potential in that space for sure. And it's not just Woolworths who could do better. There's a couple. And just my example I happen to have. Yeah. But I think part of it is really around the segments at the top are still really big. And so, we always talk about going on this journey to one-to-one. Yes. And micro communications and things like that. And we're not there yet. And in marketing, it's probably harder than service. Like in service, it's definitely happening because
in service, you can almost predict what a customer is going to ring and complain about if you have enough digital experience, because you know they've Googled the problem that they've got. They haven't got a resolution, so now they're going to ring the call center. So you have that really like neat path. And it's quite finite as well. Whereas when we talk about, human behavior and how volatile we are and the decisions that we make, it's really hard for a machine to work that out. And to be able to do that at the individual basis, the computer processing power it needs is huge as well. So I feel like we cut corners to save costs, whether that be on how detailed the model gets or how many iterations we do, and then that's where it fails for the customer.
I think probably one thing that I'm hearing come through that you're not saying yet, but is that we need to be patient. We're not some of it we're not there yet for, but it will come. But be patient to see when it does come, because it'll be exciting when it's here. Yeah,
I think so. I think the technology is probably here. It's just not hooked up. The data's not going into it in the velocity that it needs to be able to find all of those patterns. So, like a model to predict exactly what products you're going to buy when you probably buy, I don't know how much is in an average basket, but it's probably like 100 different products in there, is a really hard calculation compared to working out, predicting when a customer is going to change his home loan.
Yeah,
because you've only got one data point. Yeah, you've only got one data point to work to in that status. But then again, like, you think about how much Amazon has in terms of data. Like, it's huge. And it still gets its recommendations wrong too.
Definitely. Well, this has been absolutely fantastic. I've really enjoyed this discussion. I've learned so much. I'm sure others have too. I've got my final question for you. My last question I ask everyone: if you were a brand, what brand would you be and why?
Okay, so I'm going to fess up here. I knew this question was coming, and
I didn't tell you. You listened to my podcast, so thank you.
That's right, I did. So I knew that. Yeah, exactly. So I knew the question was coming, and so I reverse engineered it. And I put the qualities of the brand that I wanted into ChatGPT to see if we could brainstorm together. And I'm really happy with the result. I'm going to go with the brand Lego.
Oh, lovely. I like it.
And I shared that with one of my colleagues this morning, and they're like, oh, that's totally you. Because, you think about Lego, and Lego's like the all-round good guy.
Yep.
Like,
until you step on it.
Yes, as mums of boys, we both familiar with that feeling. But yeah, it has that fun and joy factor in it. And then, when there's issues that have arisen for that brand over the past, they've taken it and they've owned it. Like, they're on a path to sustainability. They're going to get rid of all that messy plastic. And then the other thing, they really kind of fit my personal brand as well, because they're about bringing diversity into the picture as well. So they were heavily criticised for not having enough women role models, for aiming at boys, and they've done quite a bit to address that. I saw in the news this week that they were distributing Lego to Indigenous remote communities as part of the Deadly Science project, and I didn't realise that this has actually been going on for years. So the whole point is to get the kids interested in STEM. They get a Lego set, and they can think about careers that they might not have thought of in the past. And these are young kids that getting that exposure at that early level. So that really kind of fits into the extracurricular activities that I do outside work. And so I thought, Lego's a good fit.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I do agree. I think Lego is great, and it does fit you quite well too. So I agree with your colleague you spoke to. Thank you so much again, Jodie, for your time today. I've really appreciated learning more about MarTech and some of the different ways that it's being used today and potentially in the very near future. Thank you. I'd also like to say thank you for listening today. If you want to hear more fabulous podcasts, don't forget to follow More to Marketing.
More to Marketing.